Now we have a situation here. So apparently, we are now watching a video about the vision of Path of Exile 2.
Hey guys, so today I wanted to make a
He
video
clarified
talking
something.
a little bit about what the true meaning of the vision is. Now, I'm making this video because there has been a lot of debate in the community about like what the pace of the game should be according to the vision, what meaningful combat should be according to the vision, and there's people on kind of both sides. Some people are saying
I'm
that,
of both
hey,
sides.
Jonathan said that the game is supposed to be not that much slower than Path of Exile 1. It's still supposed to be fast and, speedy, right? But there's another side of the conversation that's like, well, Jonathan said that no, the game needs to have meaningful combat, and therefore the game should be slower and more methodical. And I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding there that's
Yes.
causing this kind of a debate because I don't think the term meaningful combat and the pace of the game are necessarily the same thing.
Thank God. Yes, he's right. He's absolutely right. It's not. Because you can be fast as light. And the fights are still meaningful. Of course they can be. There's no reason why they couldn't. None. I would really prefer to have more movement speed. But I also... My druid is lacking some damage, unless it's bossing. Bossing is fine. Damage by bossing is fine. But killing white mobs takes way too long. Especially if there's only a couple of them. If I would have a group of white mobs, just 20, I could defeat them easily with my thunderstorm because of the chain reactions. Kill them easily, no problems. But if there's only one, oh my god, I have to actually fight them. And yes, it's as annoying as it sounds.
And I wanted to show that to you guys today with not just like what I think or you think, or like I remember Jonathan saying this, I remember him saying that, which is what most people are doing. I want to actually go through and show you guys what Jonathan actually said about what he thinks about
Nice, very
meaningful
nice.
combat, what he thinks about the pace and the speed of the game and the vision, right? So to start off, let's talk about the speed and pace of the game because again, I think that there is a separate conversation for both and they are not like the same thing. So when it comes to the speed and the pace of the game, what I found is that Jonathan has always said that the game should actually be fast. So let's watch there. I have a couple interviews, right? We have this interview with Crip, and we also have this interview with Killin9Hit that he did with like, this is a Japanese YouTuber a little bit later. This was before the game even came out, and this was made about a year ago, right before 0.3 launched. So let's take a look at this, right?
But I don't know, like, I guess all of that is to say that, like, it's a little bit hard to say exactly what the pace will be like in maps at this point. I have no doubt that the peak will still be high, but it may not be as high as it currently is in PoE 1. I think that's very likely. But at the same time, like, it's really important that people feel like they're able to break the game. Like, you want people to feel like, oh, I'm breaking the game right now. I'm like got an insane amount of projectiles, like way more than I should be able to have, like all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I guess there's a bit of a hedged non-answer.
So as you see, Jonathan says that the peak of the game will still be high, right? It still needs to be a fast game, or he wants it to be a fast game. Maybe not as fast as PoE 1, but he still wants the game to be fast, right? That is where, at the core of where he wants it to be. And this is actually echoed in his interview with the Japanese YouTuber Killin9Hit.
I wouldn't say that we intended to make maps slower. It really is just that the combat has changed. One thing that I will say is that people are taking longer to complete maps than we expected. So this is actually something that we probably will be looking into more.
Sometimes I'm spent 16 minutes in a map. 16 minutes. That's way too long. Way too long. I mean, I'm a slow player, you know. Age. I mean, I'm 43, almost 44. I'm old. I don't have the reflexes anymore like I had 20 years ago. I'm very aware of that. So I'm not that fast anymore. And that's fine. But 16 minutes for a map is way too long. Now, let's be very honest here. Might be just due to my builds. My builds might be just trash. Which is likely. Because the moment I have a good build, like my Static Strike Living Lightning Guardian, I'm zooming. And I'm so fast that I'm almost too fast for myself, which is a problem. Another problem is that in PoE 1 right now, with my Static Strike, I can't see anything. If I fight a boss or a group of mobs, I don't see anything. I just see effects, and then things die, and maybe I die. I can't. I really can't stay still unless my Guardian is tanking, which he's doing. But the moment I get aggro, I have to start moving. Also, on death effects, really bad, because I can't see anything. If you can't see anything, you can't avoid the things that are there, right? You can only avoid things that you see. Otherwise, you're dead, which is bad.
More in 030. Even some good players are taking longer than what we expected. So I think it just means that we just need to do some adjustment. Another thing.
So, as you can see, Jonathan is saying that it's not that they want to make maps slower. And in fact, at the time, which was in 0.2, before 0.3, he was saying that it was taking people longer than expected to complete maps. So the game was a little bit too slow, in his opinion. And I think, again, this is where the divide really happens. Jonathan has always wanted the game to be fast paced. So anybody who is thinking that the game is supposed to be slow is basically not either like forgetting or haven't watched the actual interviews or listened to what Jonathan has actually said. And again, I also think that a lot of people are kind of, I guess, mixing up what like meaningful methodical combat is and mixing that with slower gameplay. And this is kind of like a good part of the interview that kind of bridges that like misunderstanding that Jonathan talks about here.
Ultimately, the purpose of one of the major things we wanted to change about PoE 1 versus 2 was making the combat more meaningful. I don't know, a lot of people talk about us slowing the game down, and I wouldn't say that that is a goal. The main goal is just to make combat more meaningful and exciting. However...
So, as you can see, he said the goal is not to slow the game down, it's to make the combat more meaningful.
Yeah.
Meaning that it's not the same thing.
Exactly.
Speed and meaningful combat aren't the same thing. And this leads us to the kind of question of like, what is meaningful combat actually? Because there's a lot, this term gets tossed around quite a bit about meaningful combat. And I was actually watching a video by Jorgen where he talks about this idea of meaningful combat and how people don't really know, like have a real definition for it. And I actually talked about what my definition for meaningful combat is, and I'll show you that clip right now. To me, meaningful combat means like, I mean, to be honest, I actually think Path of Exile 1 has quite a bit of meaningful combat in the end game, in like pinnacle bosses.
I agree. As someone that never fought these bosses, I agree. I've only seen videos, but I agree. I completely agree. They do have meaningful combat. Absolutely. If you have to pay attention to the mechanics, that's meaningful combat. It's literally that simple.
Like having to dodge attacks, having to maneuver through spells, having to, where you're not just like pressing one button, face taking everything, right? Of course, you can get your build to that point where you are doing that, but if the majority of builds are doing that, then that's not meaningful combat, right? Having to interact with the enemy and interact with its attacks, and not just sitting there and face tanking everything. That to me is what it is. So yeah, that's my definition of meaningful.
Well, you can make even face tanking meaningful if getting there is I don't even know how to phrase that. But I remember I played the warrior last season. I don't even know what skill I used. What I remember is that I literally face tanked the Firecaster boss in Act 3. The one underneath the time travel thingy. In the pyramid. That boss, I face tanked them. And all abilities. I completely face tanked them. Because I was practically immune to fire damage. And that felt so good. It felt so incredibly good. I either have put a video out of all the boss fights I did with that warrior, or I planned on doing it. But I never did. Because I fell off. Damage-wise, I didn't do any damage. And Act 4, I think, I started to do no damage. It was horrible.
Combat. And the reason why I'm showing you guys that is because I actually think it aligns pretty well with what Jonathan thinks meaningful combat is. So I went and searched again what Jonathan has said about what meaningful combat is. And actually, I do think this is where Path of Exile 2 has failed. And it's not the speed part that is the meaningful combat, but as you can see here, what he says about meaningful combat, right? So compared to PoE 1, how crazy can some of the builds get in PoE 2 in terms of map clear speed? It looks like PoE 2 combat is a little bit more tactical and methodical, but you can still get to the point where your build is a push one button and clear the screen sort of thing, or that be reserved to PoE 1. So he said it's not going to be as ridiculous as PoE 1, but we still need you to feel like you're becoming some sort of a god towards the end game. You can definitely get pretty crazy with certain builds, but we want there to be meaningful combat. That is something that we can do a lot better with how bosses work with PoE 2. In PoE 1, every map had a boss at the end, so in order to keep the map, the time a map might take you to be reasonable, we couldn't really push the difficulty of a map boss too far. But in Path of Exile 2, map bosses are only in 1 every 4 maps. That has changed, obviously, right? Since then.
By the way, good change. Good change.
And you can only see them on where they're on the atlas. So you can decide if you're boss hunting mode or map clearing mode. This allows us to make bosses harder and more rewarding so they can be longer and more involved and allow you to have a more tactical combat while still allowing you to clear maps well. So again, the meaningful combat, in my opinion, comes more of on the boss killing side from what I can tell from what Jonathan is saying. He's saying, like, we still want you to blow maps up, right? That's kind of the goal of where we want you to be. But where the meaningful combat comes from is where you're interacting with the enemy when it comes to bossing. And again, I think this is where they've really kind of failed us.
So the bossing is where you are methodically and slower. While at the rest, you are supposed to zoom. Okay. Yes, they failed. Because I'm not zooming through the maps. The little trash mobs give me harder times than the bosses in a lot of cases. One of the maps where you fight the Chimera. The Chimera is no problem for me with my druid. Literally 0 problems. That thing just dies. It just melts. Now it takes me 60 to 120 seconds, but it's dead. Maximum maybe 3 minutes. But the normal mobs on the map, they are the problems for me. They are way more of a problem. Which is weird. That shouldn't be the case. Maybe they need to reduce the HP of the mobs Maybe that would solve the problem. I don't know. But maybe my build is just trash.
For that. And, really echoes this here too. So he asked the question here on Chat News: what are of the most significant changes in the direction of PoE 2 is the emphasis on making visual feedback clear, and that means not having so many projectiles on the screen. Some players have said that this makes the game look slower, yet it seems like this will be better pacing for graphics. What are the reasons for this change? There are a few reasons if we want players to actually engage with boss mechanics. Then you need to not be melting the boss with 1,000 projectiles per second. This has to happen so you can respond to something. So again, it is about bossing, in my opinion, where the meaningful combat really comes in.
I agree.
And he does mention this thing about like 1,000 projectiles or something and making the screen like not very clear, right? And he talks about this in this interview with Crip as well as a place that he feels like it would be bad if Path of Exile were to get there.
Yes.
But what I do think is also bad, and I guess this is another philosophical thing, is that I don't think it's really good when you someone opens up Path of Exile on Twitch. They look at what the game looks like at the absolute 1% end of it, and it just looks like utter, just like what is even going on the screen. It's just like shit is everywhere. There's like there's no visual clarity. I cannot tell what the hell is going on, and the boss melts in like 2 seconds. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that's really very good either.
So
I agree.
That, in my opinion, again, is where kind of the meaningful combat stuff kind of comes in. And also, in addition to that, just visual clarity. I think also visual clarity oftentimes may be misconstrued with like speed as well. Like visual clarity and speed are completely separate things. And what he's saying here is you need visual clarity to be able to have meaningful combat so you can actually interact with the bosses and, dodge their attacks and things like that. So again, there is this real disconnect in the player base with the concept of speed and meaningful combat. And I think that maybe Jonathan hasn't ever really been super clear about that either, and has only talked about them in like bits and pieces and have never really answered the question directly, or maybe it's just been too long ago since he's done that, right?
Yeah.
So this video today really is to kind of help inform anybody who's out there really trying to make this, I don't know, not claim, but just like, it feels like there's a lot of people who are just throwing things at the wall and spitballing when they're not really even quoting Jonathan directly. And as a result, there's just a lot of jumble going on about like what meaningful combat and the speed of combat and pace of everything actually needs to be or should be according to the vision. So yeah, but all this to say too is that this doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because Jonathan has also said this.
So like that's we'll I guess end up where we end up, where it honestly, and it may sound a bit silly, but it's like it just has to feel fun to me, right? Like I have to play it and feel like this feels fun.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't feel fun to me, then I'll increase the numbers. And that's really what it comes down to.
So I mean, look, we can just have a debate about what the game should be, what the game was supposed to be set out with at, but at the end of the day, Mr. Joe Nathan himself has come out and said, hey, look, you know what? I don't care. If the game is fun to me, that's good. If it's not fun, then I might go and increase the numbers and make things faster and make things bigger, right? So all in all is to say, I guess it doesn't really matter. But yeah, again, I just think there is a big misconception here that we've all had. And hopefully this video clears it up. And if any of your friends are like, have this debate with you, go ahead and show them this video. That way we can get things cleared up. But yeah, let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think. I'm sure there's still going to be some of you guys who are going to be like, no, well, Jonathan actually meant this when he said that. But I mean, you can say whatever you want, right? Whatever he said is here. I just quoted him directly. So there it is. Leave me your comments down in the comment section below. And also, if you enjoyed this video, please, best way to support the channel is by hitting the sub button. It is completely free and lets me know that you enjoy this type of content. I also stream on twitch.tv/MeSuckSure every single day. So hopefully I get to see you guys on my stream. But if not, hopefully I'll see y'all on the next video. All right, guys. Peace.
Good video. Actually good video.